We had a vision for sustainable growth. You have to build your supporter base or you build your revenue base.
Ross Buttenshaw was the CEO of Christians Against Poverty in Australia, significantly growing the organization from its early stages. Ross is a financial master, a compassionate expert, and has successfully transitioned from the not-for-profit sector to a commercial advisory practice.
If you're doing good work within reaching core or whatever your call or purpose is in that organization, it's very apparent.
Ross has used his commercial, financial, and leadership expertise to fight poverty and significantly grow an organization effective in changing lives. He now uses the same skill set to guide and lead seekers of financial management and wisdom. His driver for both is powered by purpose.
We raised about $500,000 in short term. Some amazing guys from the finance area came up and supported us.
As a leader, what sort of challenges did you face as far as that managing that ecosystem?
The goal was, yes, to be able to be profitable so that we could build into other things we want to do.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming down.
Great to be here, Mark.
Appreciate you taking the time. We did the Monday Movement podcast as well for those that might be interested in a faith journey.
Yep.
But today we're talking all things leadership. Can you tell us a bit about what CAP is and why it's important?
Yeah, CAP was birthed out of a desire to help people in financial stress. The founder experienced that himself, John Kirkby, amazing guy, and typical to an entrepreneurial type of makeup, said if no one else is doing it, might as well be me. So he birthed that in the UK, and the core of that was getting in front of people, distributed, I suppose, into communities through churches to reach those who were really in need and desperate and didn't know where to turn. Dealing with financial negotiations can be quite a complex matter. Absolutely. And not many people have the tools or had the tools, especially as we developed the organisation.
Yeah. And how did you get involved in that to start off with?
The founder was out in Australia doing some speaking, I heard, decided to support it a little bit financially. So, and what marked me, he rang and left a message on my phone as just a random person giving some financial support and thanked me, and it spoke a lot to me.
Love that.
That was the first involvement. And my wife and I felt to go on a bit of a journey, an adventure. We had kids at the time, 9 and 6. And we just felt to go to the UK where my wife had a heritage. And so we were able to, they let us in basically. We chose all the countries of the world, so who will let us in?
Yeah.
We knew a city we wanted to go to. I had been put in connection with the founder just to help support. We were looking for roles I was looking for roles in banking and finance, and I had some interviews lined up already. So it was really just a bit of a go explore the world type of thing, what could go wrong.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, I had to make a decision on whether I accept corporate role or was offered also to start in this fledgling charity, which had about 25 staff at the time. I think it grew to about 200-300 staff in the UK, head office and around all over the UK. But at the time it was quite small.
Yeah.
But something grabbed me and we both actually gave up the taking corporate jobs and dove into a bit of an experiment.
The scary not-for-profit world.
Yeah.
And then you obviously caught the vision for what was happening there and came back to Australia and got involved here.
Yeah.
Early days of leadership for you. Do you want to just give us an idea of kind of what you inherited and what the challenges were when you first started as CEO?
Well, the year was, I believe, 2008 when I took over.
Okay.
Now,
yes. Legendary year.
Legendary year. So you're facing, I think our budget at the charity at the time was $700,000. And we never knew where much of that money was coming from at the time.
Yeah.
We had a vision for sustainable growth, but like anything, when you start out, you have to build your supporter base or you build your revenue base. So it was GFC time and really all just hit the fan. And the reality of the financial need to grow and to fund the way we were operating, it became apparent that we weren't going to be able to continue on with that same course of action. We had to make some big decisions. We had to raise about $500,000 within probably a month or two, just to keep the bills.
challenge in that environment, I mean, must have been massive.
Oh, well, this is a time when it feels like no one's got any money, all the funding sources are drying up.
Yeah.
We also realized, we sat down and said, sometimes, necessity, is the mother of invention. The necessity is that even if we get that money, the forecast does not look great for the expense to run the organization versus the income that we thought we could continue to then generate. So we went hunkered down and came up with a re-engineering of the way we ran the organization in Australia, different to the UK, which means we could continue to help and probably shaved off a third of the cost each year. Unfortunately, we had to, at that time, make some redundancies, about 9 out of 20-odd staff. And that was one of my first gigs. So
it
was from the frying pan into the fire.
Exactly.
But we raised about $500,000 in short term. Some amazing guys from the finance area came up and supported us. It was quite miraculous in many ways.
And then the organization obviously grew, distribution grew, the number of people you were helping out of poverty grew a lot over the time that you were there. Just give us an idea for people who may not be familiar with the organization, just how transformative that is for one of your clients.
Yeah, so typically you can get a range of people who have minor debt issues and lots of dysfunction in their life to those facing bankruptcy, and the stigma of bankruptcy and financial ruin is unless you've faced it, it's hard to imagine.
Yeah.
And we had the extreme from single mums living in cars, not knowing where to turn, young children, have some amazing transformative. I know people personally still who were dragged out of that situation.
Yeah.
And the thing is, their children's lives were transformed. I know young leaders who are now leading who were destitute kids living in the car with their mum.
Awesome.
I don't know every story, but there's numbers of those sort of stories. And so it's quite a spectrum of help, young families who just don't know how to put food on the table and manage all the debts and so on. And really the organisation stepped in as an advocate. We negotiated with banks and financial institutions. We gained a lot of respect for that. When I was in the UK, part of the role I took on before I came back out here was to go raise money from the institutions, and it was 1% of all the debt we managed. We asked them to pay back to us as a donation, and so I sort of started that. That was I pioneered that role in the organisation, and before you know it, we had 12 or 13 different banks giving back in that area, and
amazing.
And we didn't get the same thing happening in Australia, but the essence of that was standing up to the banks and saying, you need to take it easy on these people. You need to negotiate. You need to help them find a way through this.
Yeah.
And
even commercially, it's a better outcome for them.
Yeah.
They're actually going to get paid. Like
it's either that or they're selling it off to a debt recovery and they're getting cents in the dollar.
Totally. Yeah. So doing a great thing at a grassroots level. You plugged into, I'm just thinking from a leadership perspective, lots of complexity, trying to work through churches. A lot of people are not familiar with how churches function and not-for-profits. As a leader, what sort of challenges did you face as far as that managing that ecosystem?
There was so we're relatively unknown. So you have to be able to sell the concept.
Yeah.
You have to be able to promote what you do. You have to, so there's that whole sense of business development when you're growing from a base of no one knows who you are. One of the biggest challenges in Australia is the spread out nature of the country. So when we first started, we had about 7 or 8 partnerships, mostly around Sydney and 1 or 2 in Brisbane. And when I was there, we we decided we're not going to stay just in Sydney and Brisbane, and we launched out throughout first to, I think, Victoria, South Australia, Western Australia, Tasmania, Northern Territory. So we went from about 7 or 8 partnerships to about 50 in 8 years. And that presents a big challenge as well. So every state you go to seems to operate slightly different. The dynamics of not just the churches who we partner with, and they're an amazing organisation, the church, because they're in the grassroots in the community wanting to reach out and help. And that's who we partner with to do that. But even banks, funders, corporates all work differently. You know, the Melbourne corporates have a different attitude to the Sydney corporates getting in and seeing something. It's totally different. So you have to learn the new lingo, the new vibe of a different city and be respected and find those introductions. And so it's really some unique challenges of growing from city to city around Australia and the distances involved.
Absolutely.
And, one of our funders and mentors said to me once, he said, Ross, you got to go. You got to do it. He said, it's just going to cost you more, and because the distances are great, but, you know, if you put in the attention to it and put the resources into it, you'll achieve it. Yeah. So we just went on. And
so you had, obviously there was some, you had some top end funders as well as sort of Mar and Pa type funders. They were good. As far as, did you get some mentors to help you on your leadership journey along the way?
Absolutely. I had mentors from the not-for-profit space, and also some of the our bigger funders. We had a little niche of private equity guys who just love what we do. Yeah. And they got, you know, if you want to have a mentor for business and how to get through some of the challenges, I think there's not many better out there than guys who are constantly looking at deals on the table and making decisions about what's going to work and what doesn't. Yeah.
I know we won't mention names, but I know a couple of those guys. Yeah. Seriously top end of town. Yeah. Smart, capable people. Yeah. Great to have some influence like that.
Yeah. It's and it all starts with doing the small things right. You make the right connections. You do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah. Bit of integrity,
totally. Earn their trust, and then they put their trust in you because you know they want to do good with the resources they've been given.
Yeah. And also I think you talked a little bit about a sense of purpose before. They have, that's one of their reasons for being, is being philanthropic. They've done well. They want to give back, and they have a sense of purpose around that. Yep. Can we talk about a sense of purpose and direction? I think it's pretty fundamental for alignment and creating a culture that people want to be a part of.
Absolutely.
In an organisation like CAP, it's very easy to articulate that, be a part of that. A little bit more difficult in a commercial environment. You've been involved in both spheres. Do you see a fundamental difference there?
Look, it could be considered very easy in the not-for-profit sector to stand up and say this is what we stand for, because if you're doing good work within reaching poor or whatever your distinctive call or purpose is in that organisation, it's very apparent.
Sure.
You know, you're reaching kids, you're reaching the poor, you're feeding people. So it's hard to look on and question that. Now, in a corporate, there's always the overlay of profit and the bottom line. And so if you're going to dig deeper, and, you know, many great communicators out there call us to, even in the corporate world, to look at the why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
There can be skepticism over whether it's just another trick to get everyone excited for the mission.
Yes.
You know, so I think as a leader, you have to determine, and it depends, are you the owner? Are you just the CEO? Ultimately, the drive for the organisation can be quite distributed, you know, between the shareholders and the owners.
Yeah.
I think it gets harder the more commercial the nature of the organisation is, but there's still the ability, I think, with every organisation to say, ultimately, what are we trying to achieve?
Yep.
And if you have control over your organisation, you have the ability to decide, what are we ultimately here for? What's the legacy we want to bring and leave?
Yep.
You know, is it And Simon Sinek he also talks about game theory, and his recent book, actually, I'm going to forget the name because I just thought of him then, but I read it. And do we want to have an organization that sort of lasts beyond us, or are we just in to win now? And,
right.
So all these things we have to go through, and the why behind it has to become a real, your closest leaders have to try and understand and answer that question.
Yes, Simon Sinek with the reason why and putting 3 circles on a board made a fortune out of that. So he's done all right.
Yeah, I'm sure he's done fine.
But sometimes I think it is very much a cynical process, or it's it's kind of just a done thing. I had one person I used to work for. I just done my MBA, and he was a very good guy. Actually, I really enjoyed working for him. Really quite an influence on me. I said, what's your purpose and mission and reason for being? And was very much in that mode. He said 20% return on capital. I said, oh no, but what's your purpose? 20% return on capital.
Yeah.
Okay, heard you, got it. Very commercially orientated, and yet in the midst of that, there was a big legacy component, giving back component.
Yeah.
He loved people and family legacy. Business has been around for 100 years. He was handing it over to the next generation. So he did have a lot of purpose in behind that, but wasn't particularly willing to articulate that. So I think it's a great thing to dig into. Yeah. Easier in a not-for-profit space than a commercial space.
Yeah, and it's easier when you have control.
True. Yeah, absolutely.
So the more that control gets spread out and you lose through maybe public listings and so on,
definitely
it gets harder.
Yes. So leading a not-for-profit, it is different, or profit for purpose. Maybe that's a better way to talk about it.
Yep.
You have a lot of influence. You have a broader ecosystem. You have volunteers. You have volunteer partner organizations. There's not a lot of command and control type structures. How did you manage that?
Yeah, good question. I tend to view this as like the stakeholders in the organization.
Yeah.
And every organization would play that game and understand who are your key stakeholders. I believe with the not-for-profit space, your employees are key stakeholders.
Yeah.
And they become a bit more, it depends on the not-for-profit you're in. So some can almost become a corporate.
Yeah. Sure.
I suppose the smaller you are and the more flexible you are, you need to be able to treat employees as a stakeholder that needs to be looked after, and they're harder. Corporates tend to be able to swing the bat of, wield the power of the dollar and the maybe have a lot more resource in the reward that they can apply. And it's never always about money.
Sure.
But yes, trying to get good people is a challenge, I think, when they're competing.
Definitely.
So you've got to be able to, and it's always more than just about the money. So you've got to be able to articulate the vision. You've got to be able to attract people with that purpose, and that's a key difference, I think.
Okay.
Understanding that you're building something bigger.
Yeah.
And that purpose drives through and can attract people.
Yeah.
And so that I always said my challenge, and this will be almost every business, was getting the right people on board and having the right income coming through.
Yeah.
Income sources. If we can nail the money and we can get the right people, we'll be fine. Of course, it's not that easy, but they are two key resources that you cannot do without.
Yeah. I built a career out of hiring very smart people and trying not to get in their way too much.
I think finding the people was my biggest challenge.
Yeah.
I almost would have taken, that's a bigger problem than the money.
Yeah. So that sense of purpose and activation around that for people, I think that's a big driver of why people join a not-for-profit.
Yeah, I do believe it is. And look, you get books, and there's people out there, second half, you do your corporate life, you make your money, and then now you're seeking to give back. And I almost did the reverse, where I somehow found myself in that space in my first half.
Yeah.
And, that's interesting, because then what do you do after that? But that's the challenge. People are looking to maybe make their mark, achieve their goals, and then they sometimes start looking of, I've achieved, I've ticked the boxes, and now I can give time to that. It's more challenging if you want to do that younger in life and
exactly,
and still have a good life for your family, and If you're living somewhere in Sydney and you want to go start, you're a guy or a female, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
You want to go, you support your family, have good things in life. It's a sacrifice. So there quite often is a willingness or a need to sacrifice what you could be earning as a commercial.
Yes. Very much startup sort of vibes.
Yes.
But without the commercial outcomes.
Yep.
Possible commercial outcomes. And do you think that's that wanting to activate something internally around a sense of purpose? Do you think there's a personal reason why people want to find something with some purpose in it?
Yeah, I think there's something within all of us. I heard a counselling psychologist talk once about purpose being very closely linked to your ego.
Yeah.
And let's face it, some of us have a stronger ego than others.
I've noticed that.
Not looking at anyone. But we all do. And, we can – sometimes you confuse it and you say, what's my purpose in life? Well, sometimes it's very closely driven to your own desires and drive, and acknowledging that can be a freeing thing in some ways, and saying, well, okay, I want to achieve this because it feels good to give back, and it actually feels good and part of my life to do that. So I don't think that's a problem as such, but sometimes we need to understand that it can be quite ego driven, even wanting to make a difference in the world.
Yep.
It's like
that's an uncomfortable insight, I think.
Yeah,
but very, very.
Well, I found it uncomfortable when it was revealed to me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm relatively self-reflective. But I also heard someone say, self-reflection can be closely related to depression. So the more self-reflective you are,
that's true,
the more depressive you can be. So
very true.
We need that balance, and
we do,
but we still need to understand what drives us.
Yeah, exactly. Talking of balance. Work-life balance, complete myth, never happens. But certainly it's an important part of life to try and blend or construct life in a way where you can live well as lead well. You're in your early 50s and you're a grandfather. Like, I don't even know how that's quite actually physically, metrically possible. Do you want to walk us through the metrics around that?
It probably means I'm poorer than most.
You get your whole life ahead of you now. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and I've got the wisdom.
Kids
probably
I've
learned
married, and they've got kids, and into your early 50s, and you're healthy and all the rest of it. So it's not
empty
a bad
nesters.
Life. So good.
By the way, I've been empty nest, no kids in the house for 6 or 7 years.
Wild, man. That's
wild. So yeah, it is quite wild.
It is. I'm in my early 60s, and they're still floating around, sort of.
Look, the reality is we just started relatively young.
Yep.
And, I wasn't chasing down any, I wasn't like a corporate ladder. I was just enjoying life and doing my thing. But I found someone I love young.
Yeah, awesome.
And
she's amazing too, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. We've been married 32 years, 33 this year.
Yeah.
So that's quite a stint, and
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about my marriage.
It's about living well as well, like, and then you had kids pretty quick as well.
Yeah, the kids were quick, and I actually really enjoyed. I got a lot out of fatherhood, so it was something I would say it was this. I always said in my teens, somehow I had this desire or belief to be a young father.
Yeah,
I didn't want to be someone who was throwing around the footy and was groaning with pain and couldn't do it.
Right.
So somewhere when I was young, I got in my head that I wanted to be a young father.
Yeah, I was the complete opposite.
Yeah,
for sure.
So that's sort of probably what
it must have worked. You must have passed on that desire to your kids, because they got married quite young, and
my daughter, yeah,
and then had kids quite young as well.
Yep. So the net effect of that is, grandfather at 46 or 47.
It's great, man.
Yeah, and I love it because grandkids are that it's a joy because you can spend time with them, but you just give them back. And there's no real stress about that.
I had teenagers at that age, so I was way behind you.
Yeah,
but family's important, and I think you have a great family, and they're wonderful kids, and they've got their families now, and they're doing so well. At a young age, so you're now free to go and do all the things you want to do.
Yep.
But it must have been pretty intense being young, being very important position with lots of stakeholders sort of pulling you travel and things. How did you manage that? Give your family some priority in the midst of that craziness?
To me, it was like a not negotiable. I don't know whether it just came naturally, and I got real enjoyment and satisfaction out of my time with my family. So for me, it's I'm never at home trying to spend time with my family and do work at the same time. It's total demarcation between the two. When I'm with you, because I can't do that.
Sure.
I would be a crap father if I was trying to be emailing and doing all that stuff at the same time.
Absolutely.
I would carry it. I'd be distracted. I wouldn't know what you're talking about half the time.
Yep.
Because and that can creep in. We all know that can creep in anyway.
For sure.
You only have to read one email and then you're thinking about it, and then the wife's saying, "You're not listening to me."
Yeah.
And so to me, I always have disciplines of I don't check emails after I leave work.
Okay.
I don't generally do, work phone calls. And if you're now, not every job can do that.
Sure.
But I really made a demarcation space between that. And so the idea was that
Love it.
my family gets high quality.
Sure.
And even if you travel a bit and you're away a lot, and we did. I had plenty of travel in that space for
definitely
years.
Particularly when you're growing that network.
Yeah, and we were based in Newcastle regional, and so always in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane. You have to do almost everything in one of the key cities.
Yeah,
and so that's just time.
Absolutely. So clear demarcation from home. I'm home. Working. And
enjoy. Just find things you enjoy.
Love it.
During that, I was also doing masters of, at uni.
Yeah.
But to me, that was energizing.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah. So study when it's very applicable to what you're doing is a whole different game, isn't
absolutely.
it? From undergraduates and things. I did zoology as my undergraduate, so that's not career advice. But when I was doing my MBA, just the fact that I could take this and apply it, it's a whole different game.
I found it really energizing.
So you were investing in yourself, education, demarcation around family time, so quality over quantity.
Yep.
What about your own? Anything else for yourself as far as physically staying fit? And did you?
Well, I back when I was running the organisation, I would always take time to go running, riding. I chose some challenges. I challenged the team, international guys, to do a bike ride. Like the Tour de France started in Yorkshire, where we were based, and I said, "Come on, guys, let's do a charity leg, which is a 200k ride.
Yeah,
the same route as the Tour de France first day.
Yep.
So trained for that, and some of those were my most fulfilling times of having a goal I was working towards.
Yeah,
in the midst of lots of pressure.
Love it.
So
definitely something about that, isn't there? That ability to be able to have a challenge or an outcome or some sort of competitive outcome makes a difference.
So that was a period I went through, and that was I love that. It was probably my fittest. These days, I've got less of a goal of an outcome and more. I got into a sport, kite surfing, about 4 or 5 years ago. I just love it. It's almost
keep
addictive.
It on the sea, not the car park, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But once you get the hang of it, it's like the most fun you can have on water. And
absolutely.
So choosing to do things which energize you, because I want to be fit, but I don't like just doing fitness for the sake of fitness. I like to tie it in with something that I feel is fun. And if it puts some stress on the body and provides a good fitness outcome, that's the best combination.
Absolutely. And you're right. I think finding things that you enjoy, you're much more likely to do it, and much more sustainable than enduring some discipline.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else around leadership lessons that you learnt, any disciplines that you might have had, or ways of doing things as a leader that you can share with other maybe or more aspiring leaders?
I think one of the key things that really helped me was discovering about myself, personal strengths, personal inner workings.
Yeah.
We went through one of the key benefits was the Gallup Strengths Finder type.
I love it. It's good.
We ran that through our whole organization. And to me, I'd known personality tests and different things, but this was striking in its revelation of who I am and the pros and cons to maybe the themes of where I can be strong in life, not just for me, but my team.
Yes.
And when you understand how other people tick, and this type of stuff really, really expanded on that. And to me, the greatest benefits came when I understand what motivated me and how I worked and what brought tension to me and what my limits were and areas of strength and potential weakness, and also then how that interacted with other people.
Yeah.
It's quite transformative.
Definitely.
I don't actually know how you can operate.
What were your top couple of strengths? Can you
to
recall now? Yeah, it's been a long time since you've done it.
Communication
Yeah.
was one. Relation, I think relator.
Yep.
Or
Yep.
that relational space.
Yeah.
I did have harmony, and like, you're not meant to redo these, I don't think,
Sure.
but they can adjust, because the difference between the top 5 and
Yep.
I have been a harmonious person. I found I was able to beat, to lead presents you with many non-harmonious circumstances
That's
of
so true.
conflict.
Yeah.
What I did find there was, when the outcomes are so important, it's amazing what conflict you can deal with when you know you've got outcomes.
That's a really good insight.
You've got to have
totally.
You can deal with conflict as long as you're so tied into the outcomes you need.
Yep.
You can deal with it. You have to.
You do. Like the clarity of why we're here, what we're trying to achieve. It makes it easier for sure. I think that's why the clarity of vision, direction, and agreed outcomes becomes paramount.
Yep.
My top 2 on the Clifton was strategic competitive.
Yep.
Which is great if you're a CEO, not so good if you're playing Monopoly with a 12-year-old.
Mm.
You have to find some different outlets to satisfy your competitive nature for sure. And any other like personal disciplines around how you construct life or do your day, as far as keeping yourself centered and productive as a leader?
Yeah, I think no matter where you're at, you've got to be able to pull back to yourself and find your own space. I always was challenged with this in, you get your extroversion type and people on that scale of extroversion and introversion. I always looked and saw people who are more introverted were able to maybe lock in and get things done, shut down and focus. But I wasn't this full extrovert either.
Yeah.
I did find out that there is a term and more of an ambivert, that sort of middle range, and I really fit within that, and it helped explain a lot of things.
Yeah.
So understanding where that is, and so I like being around people.
Yeah.
But I've learnt the value of being able to pull back and find my own personal space.
Okay.
Where I've got to regenerate and lock in, and I tend to park a bit of time before I go to bed every evening, just to find my own way of doing that.
I like that.
And to me, I see the night before the next day as the start of the day.
Yep.
And it's only a fairly recent thing, actually.
Okay. And that's made a difference?
Yeah. I feel the things I feel I want to commit to, think through, process, communicate.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you unpack that all before you go to bed. I guess you probably sleep better too, do you? Because you've sort of unpacked some of the nuances of the next day.
Look, even there's things going on in life which are not work related.
Yeah.
Which everyone has.
Sure.
You got friends who are sick. People facing critical illness. There's lots of stresses that you have to find your way of working through.
Yeah.
Actually, when I work with my clients in the work I do now, my sort of what I say I'm there to help do is to help them find a greater level of certainty in life. So if I can't do that with myself, if I can't work through and the certainty it's closely linked with peace.
Yeah.
That sense of peace of where you're heading.
Yeah.
Like, you can't bring guarantees. Very little in life can you guarantee. But if you can find a greater sense of peace and around life of where it's heading.
Yeah.
And that's a discipline in how you handle life mostly, because things come left field all the time.
They do.
So it's almost how you deal with life.
Yeah.
And so my personal time is about processing the things that are coming from all different angles all the time, which are out of your control, which is really so much of life.
Definitely. So you have the disciplines around centering, you've exercise, maintaining relationships, and those things. So I think that's wonderful. Do you see any other difference between leading a not-for-profit and maybe leading a commercial organization? Anything else in that space?
I think there can be a lot of crossover. Like what I have found is great leaders in not-for-profits would be a great leader in a commercial environment.
Yeah. Love that.
They just actually would be.
It's true.
And I've been across both, but I did most of my senior leadership type of stuff in the not-for-profit.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact you could plug me into any organization. If I felt strongly enough about it, I'd be a great leader.
Yeah.
My wife works in a not-for-profit now in the social services space, and we talk about different leadership situations she comes out of. And I see, examples of like, oh my goodness, is that going on? And then I hear amazing people. And then the organizations I've worked with, I still have connections with some people who have played some pretty high-ranking roles in commercial.
Yeah.
And when I sit down and reflect with them, they've got all the attributes you would actually need to be a great not-for-profit leader.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the commercial imperatives which mean they don't make that transition.
Sure.
So
absolutely.
In some ways, I think there's a lot of differences, but I think it's more driven by the person rather than the opportunity. If that person found within themselves the desire to make a difference, in a not-for-profit space, if they're a great leader in their organization, I believe they would be a great leader in a not-for-profit. It's just then there's maybe more importance on the alignment of values of what that's organization's about.
Definitely.
Because corporate world, in the end, most of them are trying to make profits and the bottom line be met.
Yeah.
And it's less about the ultimate underlying value of what you're doing.
Exactly. And I think both sectors can learn from each other.
Yeah.
Like some of the commercial disciplines, the profit-orientated ability to be able to activate a social or purpose-driven outcome. I think there's lots of disciplines in commercial that can influence and we can do better in the not-for-profit sector, and yet not-for-profit sector, because it's more ecosystem driven, more nuanced and influence based. I think those are great things that we can learn more about and use better in a commercial environment where it becomes more relational, more purpose driven.
Yep.
So I think both sides can help each other.
Well, in essence, people say not-for-profit. Most not-for-profits are making profit.
Yeah, profit for purpose, right?
Yeah, and you need to be able to have the right reserves and build capacity for other things. So it's very rare that it's like we started out very much not-for-profit, but the goal was, to be able to be profitable so that we could build into other things we want to do, but it's a different purpose and the profits are utilized in different ways. So the not-for-profit sector still has to have that commercial overlay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I noticed in your LinkedIn profile it said that you one of your main drivers is influencing for good, changing the world. From having watched you over the last decade or so, you've undoubtedly done some amazing things, and still continue to do that more on a one-on-one basis with your current clients in the financial advisory sector. So. Congratulations. Thank you so much for your contribution today. I really appreciate it. I'm sure there's a lot of leaders got a lot out of it today. So thanks for coming down, and great to see you again.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Thanks for joining us at the Lead Well, Live Well vodcast. Please like, subscribe, and share. If you want to know more about what we're all about, you can find us at leadwelllivewell.com.au.